As twilight settles over Florida's vast wetlands, the world transforms into a living dreamscape. Cypress trees rise like ancient guardians from the water, their roots twisting into shapes that resemble grasping hands reaching from another age. Fog curls low across the marshes, drifting in slow, deliberate waves as if the land itself is exhaling secrets. Here, the ground is never truly solid, every step sinks, shifts, or vanishes beneath pools of dark, silent water. It is a place where nature doesn't just hide the past, it devours it. Yet within this restless landscape lie traces of something startling, ruins scattered across Florida that predate every known culture in the region. Stone formations that shouldn't exist in a land of soft sediment. Earthworks so precise they defy the idea of primitive construction. Artifacts buried in muck that carbon date to eras no textbook mentions. Each discovery whispers the same forbidden question: are these ruins older than the pyramids? Official archaeology insists the timeline is clear, the story complete. They call these anomalies coincidences, natural formations, or misinterpretations by amateurs. But the whisper networks, local hunters, backwater explorers, retired surveyors, tell a different story. They speak of ancient foundations swallowed by swamp water, of geometric mounds that appear after storms, of artifacts removed quietly and never seen again. Their stories sound impossible, until you realize how often impossible things surface in these wetlands. This is where science grows uneasy and legends grow bold. Where the past refuses to stay buried and the future trembles at what might still be hidden. Florida's swamps aren't empty wilderness, they're vaults, preserving civilizations time tried to erase. And now, as we step into this shadowed world of mud, mist, and mystery, one thing becomes undeniable: we are about to enter forbidden territory. According to official archaeology, Florida's ancient history follows a clean, orderly timeline. It begins with the Paleo-Indians, nomadic hunters who arrived over 12,000 years ago, leaving behind simple stone tools scattered across dry plains that would one day become swamps. As ice melted and sea levels rose, new cultures emerged, the archaic peoples, then the woodland communities, followed by the mound-building societies who shaped Earth into ceremonial platforms and burial structures. Finally came the historic tribes, the Calusa ruling the coasts like maritime monarchs, the Timucua dominating the forests, the Appalachee thriving in the Panhandle's fertile lands. Textbooks present this progression as smooth and logical. Primitive beginnings, gradual development, and then cultural dissolution triggered by European arrival. But when you step outside the classroom and into the field, the story warps. The unexplained begins to surface. For instance, archaeologists have found complex geometric mound systems in regions where no advanced culture was supposed to exist at the time. Some of these earthworks predate the mound builders by thousands of years, yet show precise alignments with solstices and lunar cycles, mathematical planning far beyond what the conventional timeline allows. Other sites contain stone tools made from materials not found anywhere in Florida, suggesting long-distance connections that supposedly didn't exist. Even more troubling are the sudden disappearances. Entire populations vanish from the archaeological record with no sign of war, famine, or mass migration. Layers of habitation stop abruptly, as if the people simply dissolved into the swamp air. The Calusa, for example, maintained an empire-like society with vast ceremonial complexes, yet remnants of their origins, or their predecessors, remain murky. Some tools found in Calusa territory resemble styles thousands of years older than the culture itself. Then there are contradictions nobody wants to address. Structures dated earlier than the cultures allegedly responsible for them. Artifacts found in geological strata that shouldn't contain human presence. Shell mounds containing objects crafted with techniques unknown to the region's accepted timeline. Each anomaly sparks interest for a moment, before being quickly labeled an error, an outlier, or an unusual but explainable find. This is where tension begins to pull at the edges of Florida's official history. What textbooks claim is tidy, linear, and controlled. But what the evidence suggests is messy, older, and far stranger. Something doesn't match. And every time a contradiction surfaces, it's smoothed over, filed away, or dismissed as misinterpretation. Yet the swamps don't lie. Their mud preserves truths that academic narratives prefer to ignore. And here's the part that should unsettle us most, but those are only the ruins we're allowed to talk about. Rising from Florida's wetlands like silent monuments, the Crystal River Mounds, Letchworth Love Mounds, and the mysterious shell rings of the Atlantic coast challenge everything we think we know about early North American civilizations. Official timelines place these structures within the last few thousand years, neatly categorized as the work of woodland or Mississippian peoples. But when you stand before their flawless geometry and precise alignments, the story begins to feel incomplete, like we're seeing only the top layer of a much older past. At Crystal River, the mounds form an arrangement so mathematically elegant that some researchers argue they mirror celestial patterns. The main platform aligns precisely with solar events, its causeways pointing toward solstice sunrise points with uncanny accuracy. Yet the site also contains artifacts that don't fit its supposed age, ornaments crafted with techniques unknown to the region, burial markers older than the mound layers surrounding them, and stone tools that appear centuries out of place. Archaeologists acknowledge the contradictions but resolve them with convenient terms like cultural mixing and secondary usage. The explanations feel thin. Letchworth Love Mounds, towering above the flat Florida terrain, add another layer of mystery. Constructed from millions of baskets of soil, their sheer size suggests organized labor on a scale unusual for the era. But carbon dating at the site has produced confusing results. Some organic materials point to a much later timeframe, while other samples suggest construction phases older than any recognized culture in the region. To explain the gaps, scientists argue about contamination. Indigenous storytellers, however, speak of sky ancestors who arrived long before the first people textbooks describe, shaping the land according to celestial teachings. Then come the shell rings, massive circular formations stretching from Florida to South Carolina. Their symmetry is astonishing, near-perfect rings with consistent diameters, constructed from millions of shells layered in ways that imply intentional design rather than simple refuse disposal. Some rings align with lunar standstill points, suggesting astronomical planning thousands of years ahead of what mainstream archaeology attributes to early coastal peoples. Even stranger, certain rings cannot be reliably carbon dated at all. The shells themselves test clean, but the surrounding deposits give mixed readings, as if the structures existed before the materials that now cover them. Across these sites, myth and science collide. Indigenous oral traditions describe ancient visitors descending from the sky, teaching early humans geometry, agriculture, and celestial timing. Archaeologists dismiss such stories as symbolic metaphors. Yet the mound's orientations, construction methods, and impossible precision raise a troubling question: how did supposed primitive societies achieve such architectural mastery without written language, advanced surveying tools, or metal instruments? Every anomaly chips away at the official story. A burial mound older than the culture assigned to it. A shell ring whose geometry matches star rotations. A soil mound whose age cannot be pinned down. The past begins to look less like a straight line and more like overlapping timelines buried beneath each other. And the uncertainty deepens when researchers admit, quietly, that some mound sites resist all attempts at accurate dating, as if time itself refuses to reveal their origin. The deeper past is still hidden beneath the sand, ancient secrets await below. If Florida's ancient mounds hint at forgotten civilizations, then Coral Castle stands as their modern echo, an unfinished whisper of knowledge that shouldn't exist in the hands of a single man. Built in the early 20th century by Edward Leedskalnin, a reclusive Latvian immigrant with no formal engineering background, Coral Castle is a labyrinth of 30-ton stones carved, lifted, and set into place with a precision that defies explanation. He worked alone, at night, in near silence. No machines. No crews. Witnesses reported seeing blocks move, as if they floated, though Ed himself dismissed the questions with a cryptic smile and the claim that he had rediscovered the secrets of the ancients. The castle's stones, monolithic coral limestone blocks, fit together with astonishing accuracy. Some are so perfectly balanced that a child can pivot a multi-ton gate with one finger. Others rise vertically like miniature obelisks. The heaviest pieces weigh as much as the components of Stonehenge, yet Leedskalnin used nothing more than chains, tripods, and tools he crafted himself. At least, that's the official explanation. But no one ever witnessed the full process. Whenever curious neighbors tried to observe, Ed would stop working until they left. Trucks arrived with empty beds and departed with stones weighing thousands of pounds. Workers hired to haul coral from the quarry recalled Ed refusing their help, insisting they stay far away as he loaded the stones alone. Science calls it ingenuity. Skeptics call it clever mechanical advantage. But the atmosphere of Coral Castle, its eerie quiet, its impossible balance points, its perfect alignments, makes those explanations feel incomplete. Some visitors describe feeling a strange vibration in certain chambers, as if the stones resonate. Others note the castle's celestial arrangement, a Polaris telescope carved entirely from coral, a massive sundial accurate to the minute, and sightlines aligned with solstice and equinox events. All built by a man who claimed to have only a fourth-grade education. Leedskalnin never hid the source of his inspiration. He stated plainly that ancient cultures possessed knowledge far beyond modern understanding. "I found the secret," he said. The same secret the Egyptians used to build the pyramids. Whether he meant magnetism, resonance, anti-gravity principles, or something more esoteric, he never elaborated. But the implications are hard to ignore. Coral Castle does not feel like an odd roadside attraction. It feels like a demonstration. And that's where the mythos deepens. Coral Castle acts as a bridge between Florida's ancient mysteries and global megalithic enigmas. Around the world, Baalbek, Giza, Puma Punku, civilizations moved and shaped stones weighing dozens or hundreds of tons with methods we still cannot replicate cleanly today. The similarities are unsettling: flawless joints, astronomical alignments, inexplicable lifting techniques, and legends of sky teachers or ancient knowledge. If Leedskalnin truly rediscovered a technique once used by lost cultures, then Coral Castle becomes more than a curiosity. It becomes a Rosetta Stone linking modern Florida to a global pattern of forgotten engineering. Skeptics insist Ed used simple physics. Eyewitnesses insist they saw something stranger. And in the middle lies Coral Castle itself, defying easy categorization. It stands not as proof, but as a suggestion, a hint that knowledge once flourished in places and times dismissed by mainstream history. What makes the castle even more mysterious is the possibility that Leedskalnin wasn't reinventing anything. He may have been remembering something older. Florida's landscape is littered with anomalous ruins, shell rings, and mound complexes whose precision mirrors ancient global sites. If the ancients here held the same knowledge Ed claimed to rediscover, then Coral Castle isn't just an oddity, it's a clue. A clue pointing toward megalithic techniques that once shaped Florida long before written history. And perhaps, if Coral Castle stands as a faint echo of that lost world, the older, deeper structures hidden beneath Florida's swamps may hold the full story. Beneath the warm, shifting waters around Florida, the past lies hidden under silt, coral, and rising seas. Along the state's continental shelf, divers have reported glimpses of a world that seems impossible: stone roads stretching into the deep, geometric walls half buried in sand, and stepped platforms that resemble the foundations of forgotten cities. These submerged formations challenge the conventional belief that Florida's human history begins only a few thousand years ago. They hint at something older, something swallowed by rising oceans long before modern memory began. Near Bimini, just across the Florida Current, lies the famous Bimini Road, a pathway of massive limestone blocks arranged in a straight line, as if once supporting the foundation of a vanished structure. Mainstream geologists insist it's a natural beachrock fracture, coincidentally shaped into rectangular slabs. But divers who've mapped it argue otherwise. They describe stones fitted like oversized bricks, some stacked, others trimmed at angles too deliberate for random erosion. Photographs reveal repeating patterns, right angles, and joints that appear crafted rather than cracked. For every dismissal, new footage emerges, grainy, haunting, suggesting architecture rather than accident. The Gulf Coast offers similar puzzles. Off the shores of Louisiana and Florida, storms occasionally expose submerged formations that resemble stone pillars and terraced platforms. In 2006, a team of divers exploring a sunken reef discovered a series of large blocks arranged in what looked like a ceremonial platform. The official explanation: natural carving by currents. Yet the blocks were uniform in thickness and arranged with a symmetry difficult for nature to produce so neatly. Local fishermen claim these shapes have existed in the same configuration for decades, defying the chaotic forces of the Gulf. Along Florida's continental shelf, now more than 100 miles offshore, lie even deeper enigmas. Sonar scans have revealed rectilinear shapes beneath the sand, some resembling building foundations or entire grid-like layouts. These would have been dry land more than 10,000 years ago, during the Ice Age, when sea levels were dramatically lower. If humans lived along these ancient coastlines, their settlements would now rest under hundreds of feet of water. Archaeologists acknowledge this possibility, but whenever divers bring back photographs of symmetrical walls or unnatural angles, the phrase, natural formation, is repeated with religious certainty. Yet the evidence whispers a different story. Native American legends from the region speak of a drowned land, a once great territory swallowed by rising waters. The Seminole tell of ancient villages consumed by a roaring flood. The Timucua described coastal cities lost to the sea after a sky fire or cataclysmic storm. Even the Creek nations tell of a time when the ocean rose suddenly, forcing entire peoples inland. These aren't vague myths, they are detailed accounts of a massive inundation, preserved in oral tradition long before modern climate science confirmed dramatic sea level rise at the end of the last ice age. If those stories are memories, not metaphors, then the submerged structures along Florida's coastline may be the ruins of cultures erased by ancient climate catastrophe. Civilizations that thrived on the old shoreline, builders, navigators, astronomers, might have watched their cities sink beneath rising waves. And the most unsettling possibility? These underwater ruins may represent only a fraction of what once existed. Much of Florida's ancient world now lies beneath the sea, waiting in silence. If the ocean has already hidden one lost civilization, what else could be buried just beyond the reach of the tides? Long before Europeans recorded Florida's landscape, the indigenous peoples of the region, the Timucua, Seminole, and Calusa, passed down stories of an earlier race that once ruled the peninsula. These beings were described as impossibly tall, powerful, and skilled in ways that defied explanation. To outsiders, such tales sound like mythology. But within these cultures, the stories are treated not as fantasy, but as inherited memory, echoes of a world that existed before the land was swallowed by swamps and sea. The Timucua spoke of the Ishi, towering figures who built great mounds, carved stone like clay, and commanded knowledge that later tribes could barely comprehend. When the first Europeans encountered the Timucua themselves, remarkably tall compared to other native groups, they noted legends spoken with reverence, even fear, that their own ancestors were not the original giants of this land. Those giants came before, shaping Florida long before the Timucua's emergence. The Seminole told similar stories, describing encounters with tall ones who moved with surprising grace despite their size. These beings were said to possess tools that glowed like captured lightning, and to build with stone that sang when struck. The Seminole insisted these people did not vanish. They were overtaken by a catastrophe so great that only their echoes remain in scattered ruins and collapsed mounds. The Calusa, fierce and sophisticated in their own right, carried tales of a people, closer to the sky, who constructed monumental structures along the coast before the sea reclaimed them. The Calusa believed these early giants were not enemies, but teachers, passing down fishing techniques, astronomical knowledge, and the art of canal making before their own demise. Archaeologists dismiss these legends as metaphor, symbolic retellings of encounters with rival tribes or European explorers. But the details remain uncomfortably consistent across cultures that rarely interacted. And then there are the whispers, rumors of excavations where unusually large skeletal remains were reportedly unearthed, only to be removed under vague federal oversight. Old diaries from amateur archaeologists mention bones, too large to be human as we know it, found deep within mound interiors that predate known habitation layers. None of these finds ever reached museums. None appeared in public records. Coincidence? Misidentification? Or deliberate omission? The psychological unease deepens when you consider that many indigenous traditions describe these giants not as mythical beings, but as real people, engineers, astronomers, builders who lived in a Florida that looked nothing like the one we know today. A Florida of broader shorelines, taller ridges, and clearer skies. A Florida where civilizations may have risen and fallen long before textbook timelines begin. What if these legends aren't exaggerations, but memories? Cultural shadows of a forgotten race whose works now lie buried under forests, swamps, and sea. If the tall ones truly walked this land, then Florida's prehistory isn't missing a chapter, it's missing an entire volume. And the stories passed down through the Timucua, Seminole, and Calusa may be the only surviving clues to that lost world. Scattered across Florida, found in construction pits, drainage canals, sinkholes, and quiet corners of private collections, are artifacts that defy every accepted timeline of North American history. They appear briefly, spark controversy, then vanish into silence. Each one raises the same unsettling question: if they don't belong here, then who brought them, and when? One of the most debated categories involves metal tools embedded in soil layers older than any known Florida metallurgy. Archaeologists dismiss these finds as contamination, insisting modern metal must have slipped into ancient strata through water flow or animal activity. Yet a handful of documented cases challenge that easy answer. In one instance, a copperblade fragment was unearthed beneath an untouched shell mound, sealed under centuries of compacted material. Its alloy composition resembled Old World techniques rather than anything used by native cultures. Photographs circulated briefly among local researchers before the artifact was transferred to a university collection and never displayed again. Stone carvings present another riddle. Some depict symbology foreign to the region, spirals resembling Iberian petroglyphs, crosshatch patterns reminiscent of Andean markers, and stylized eyes similar to Mediterranean motifs. Mainstream scholars argue these similarities are coincidental, the result of universal human pattern making. But other carvings are harder to explain, such as a limestone tablet found near the St. Johns River etched with characters resembling early Phoenician script. The artifact was quickly labeled a hoax despite the finder's insistence that it came from a sealed freshwater deposit. Skeptics demanded proof, researchers requested access. Before tests could be completed, the tablet disappeared from public view. Then there are ceramics with no cultural home. Pottery fragments discovered near Tampa bear designs nearly identical to South American styles, particularly those of the ancient Valdivia and Chavan cultures. Critics claim the patterns are superficial, arguing the pieces belong to local tribes experimenting with new aesthetics. But petrographic analysis, conducted quietly by an independent lab, suggested the clay itself originated far from Florida's coastal deposits. The report reached a handful of researchers, ignited speculation, and was then withdrawn without explanation. Even more troubling are objects that surface only long enough to spark rumors. Divers off the Gulf Coast speak of stone figurines carved with elongated skulls, later purchased anonymously at estate sales. A hunter near Ocala once unearthed a carved stone head bearing unmistakable Mediterranean features. Days later, federal agents allegedly seized it under the pretext of protecting cultural resources. A contractor digging near an old plantation uncovered what he described as a metal disc with strange markings. He photographed it, posted the image online, and within hours the post vanished, along with the disc itself. Mainstream archaeology insists these stories are exaggerations or misinterpretations, chalking them up to mistaken identity, modern intrusion, or outright hoaxes. And yet the artifacts keep appearing, briefly, tantalizingly, and with enough consistency to challenge coincidence. The tension between scientific dismissal and stubborn physical evidence grows sharper with every suppressed discovery. If even a fraction of these objects are genuine, they imply contact, technology, or civilizations far older and more interconnected than Florida's accepted history allows. They suggest timelines rewritten, migrations forgotten, and knowledge erased by rising seas or deliberate concealment. And perhaps most disturbing of all is the thought that the most revealing artifacts aren't missing by accident. They're missing because someone wanted them gone. Deep in the Everglades, where sunlight filters through sawgrass like fractured glass and the wetlands stretch into an endless, humming horizon, lies a region few people truly know. Hunters who push beyond the marked trails, researchers surveying remote waterways, and locals who have lived their whole lives near the swamp all whisper the same thing: there are structures out there. Not natural rises or tangled root systems, but stone platforms, circular enclosures, and geometric foundations swallowed by vegetation so dense that even airboats avoid them. Most people never see these places. The swamp hides them with practiced ease. Trees grow over walls, vines knit across openings, and water creeps in to blur every outline. Yet some manage to catch glimpses: rectangular blocks arranged in deliberate rows, circular depressions bordered by cut stone, and elevated platforms that rise just high enough to remain dry in the rainy season. They look ancient, intentional, and entirely out of place in a landscape shaped mostly by sediment and mangrove roots. Satellite imagery only deepens the mystery. Digital archaeologists examining high-resolution scans have identified suspicious shapes beneath the canopy: concentric circles, straight-line corridors, and repeating angles that bear no resemblance to natural Everglades patterns. One formation resembles a massive ring mound more than 100 feet across. Another appears as a perfect rectangle, half buried and partially submerged. When independent researchers tried to publish their findings, the images were dismissed as pixel noise or interpretive bias, despite the remarkable consistency across multiple datasets. Eyewitness accounts add another layer of strangeness. One hunter described stumbling upon a 3-foot-high stone wall arranged in a near-perfect semicircle, only to find it completely overgrown on his return weeks later. A wildlife officer reported a platform of fitted limestone blocks hidden behind a curtain of ferns, with edges so straight it seemed impossible they formed naturally. A biologist conducting a bird survey photographed what looked like a stepped terrace rising from a shallow marsh. Before she could return, the area had flooded under several feet of water. Indigenous stories offer clues and warnings. Seminole elders speak of places the ancestors sealed, areas meant to remain untouched because they belonged to the first people, not to the tribes who later migrated south. Some tales describe structures built on high ground that sank after the great water came, echoing legends of a drowned land and a civilization that vanished beneath rising seas. The Miccosukee mention stone circles used by earlier nations to observe the skies, though they caution that those people left when the world changed. Meanwhile, official archaeology remains silent. The Everglades are notoriously difficult to excavate, with water levels, wildlife, and shifting sediments making traditional research nearly impossible. Still, the absence of formal investigation feels conspicuous. When satellite images circulated among academic groups, few responded. When local reports of ruins reached state agencies, they were archived without follow-up. A handful of researchers privately admit the sites deserve attention, but no one wants to risk credibility by endorsing what sounds like pseudo-archaeology. Yet the patterns persist. Too geometric to ignore, too consistent to dismiss, too widespread to be coincidence. Across miles of swampland, the same shapes appear again and again: circles, squares, terraces, platforms, corridors. Some align with solstice sunrise angles. Others match the layout of ancient mound sites miles away, as if part of a shared architectural blueprint. And then there are the rumors, stories of areas quietly fenced off, of drone footage confiscated, of access routes suddenly restricted under the guise of environmental protection. Whether these actions stem from genuine conservation efforts or quiet containment is impossible to determine, but they contribute to the sense that the ruins are being hidden, not simply overlooked. If Florida truly hosts forgotten structures beneath the Everglades, remnants of a civilization predating known cultures, then the implications stretch far beyond regional history. It suggests a world erased not only by time, but by water, vegetation, and silence. The swamp remembers what the textbooks do not. Who built these, and why did they vanish? When confronted with ruins that shouldn't exist, artifacts that defy timelines, and legends that echo across cultures, the question becomes inevitable: who built the worlds buried beneath Florida's swamps, shores, and sea? Theories range from grounded archaeological hypotheses to bold, controversial possibilities that blur the line between history and myth. None are complete. All are compelling. One of the most widely discussed explanations is early transoceanic contact, ancient mariners reaching Florida long before recorded history. Advocates point to pottery similarities between Florida and South America, shell tools echoing Caribbean styles, and genetic traces hinting at ancient movement across the Gulf. It's possible, they argue, that seafarers from Mesoamerica or the Caribbean brought engineering traditions that later influenced regional mound cultures. But that leaves one glaring problem: some Florida structures appear far older than these known migration waves. Another theory suggests a forgotten branch of the mound-building societies, an advanced culture that flourished and disappeared long before the woodland and Mississippian peoples. This hypothetical, proto-mound civilization may have mastered earthworks, astronomy, and navigation, leaving behind the earliest geometric mounds and shell rings. Archaeologists acknowledge gaps in early Floridian prehistory, but they rarely entertain the idea of a civilization advanced enough to leave stone structures and submerged cities. The evidence lingers, unaddressed. Then there are the post-glacial survivors. When sea levels rose after the last ice age, much of Florida's ancient landscape vanished underwater. If people lived along that broader coastline, now submerged under hundreds of feet of ocean, their cities, monuments, and cultural records would be buried beyond easy reach. This theory aligns with indigenous traditions speaking of drowned lands and vanished peoples. It offers a rational explanation, but it struggles with the technological mystery. How did these early groups achieve the architectural precision found in certain mound complexes and underwater formations? Beyond these grounded theories lie the more speculative, yet persistent, interpretations. Some researchers, both academic and independent, have drawn lines between Florida's ruins and Plato's description of Atlantis. They point to circular shell rings resembling Atlantean layouts, a drowned coastline that fits ancient flood narratives, and legends of sky teachers echoed across multiple tribes. Critics dismiss these ideas as imaginative leaps, but the parallels continue to attract attention. Another idea proposes an advanced proto-civilization, older than the mound builders, older than the earliest native cultures, perhaps older than the pyramids themselves. This civilization might have possessed knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and megalithic engineering, leaving fragments across the world: Stonehenge, Giza, Göbekli Tepe, and, possibly, Florida's enigmatic ruins. No hard proof exists, but the similarities in layout, orientation, and construction provoke uncomfortable questions. Then there's the global traveler theory, the possibility that ancient humans were far more interconnected than we believe. Artifacts resembling Old World styles found in the Americas, and vice versa, fuel the idea that ancient mariners crossed oceans long before Columbus. DNA evidence, trade goods, and mirrored myths across continents add layers of intrigue. Mainstream science remains cautious, yet it cannot fully explain the global echoes in early cultural development. Mystery school interpretations push further still. They suggest Florida once hosted a spiritual or technological hub, a place where early humans interacted with sky beings, teachers, or unknown intelligence. Indigenous legends of giants, glowing tools, and celestial knowledge lend poetic weight to these ideas, even if they remain outside traditional academia. Each theory offers a piece of the puzzle, yet none truly completes the picture. The ruins remain. The anomalies persist. The silence deepens. And in that silence lies the thrill of possibility: ancient mariners, lost continents, forgotten engineers, or something else entirely. The truth may still rest beneath the mud, the waves, and the roots, waiting to shift into view. As the sun fades over the wetlands and the last light bleeds into the horizon, Florida becomes something far older than the postcard paradise most imagine. Beneath its beaches, beneath its swamps, beneath its shifting tides lies a graveyard of civilizations, layer upon layer of stories carved in earth, coral, and limestone. These are not relics of a single era. They belong to multiple worlds, stacked like forgotten pages in a book too heavy for modern hands to lift. The deeper researchers dig, the stranger the evidence becomes. Mounds older than recorded history. Shell rings aligned with celestial cycles. Stone platforms hidden beneath the Everglades' emerald shroud. Artifacts that whisper of continents long vanished beneath the waves. Every discovery suggests another waiting below it, another civilization erased by time, by water, or perhaps by something more deliberate. Florida's ruins do not simply challenge the official timeline, they fracture it, revealing cracks through which older truths begin to seep. And yet, silence surrounds these mysteries. Scientists tread carefully, unwilling to risk their reputations. Institutions speak in cautious phrases. Government records end abruptly. Meanwhile, the land itself continues to reveal fragments, as if pushing back against the narrative imposed upon it. Even now, explorers return from the swamps, the coasts, and the offshore shelves with new stories, shapes glimpsed beneath the waves, structures rising where no maps mark them, echoes of architecture that should not exist. Florida remembers, even if we do not. In the quiet stillness of twilight, you realize the state is not a blank slate awaiting interpretation, it's an ancient archive, breathing, shifting, trying to speak through mud, roots, and stone. Perhaps the ruins aren't lost. Perhaps we simply aren't ready to understand them. Because every answer uncovered in this landscape seems to open 10 more questions. Every solved puzzle reveals another labyrinth. And every whisper from the past deepens the sense that the story of Florida is far from finished. This journey doesn't end here. It can't. There are more ridges to search, more coasts to scan, more canopies to peer beneath. The silent stones still speak, softly, faintly, but undeniably. And in future episodes, we'll keep listening.